This is some skilled worker guidance for indefinite leave to remain, so ILR. So this will be useful if you've been on a Tier 2 general visa and or on the skilled worker visa and you're coming up to apply for indefinite leave to remain after 5 years. So I'm going to share with you some important points in connection with the supporting documents you need to know about. Let's jump straight into that. So this is an example application form that I've filled out for a Mr. Sample applicant. There are various supporting documents I want to talk about, but I just want to go straight to the most important one, which is this: a document from the sponsor who issued the certificate of sponsorship that led to your last permission to stay as a Tier 2 migrant, confirming that you're still required for the employment in question for the foreseeable future. And in the case of Tier 2 General, the document should also contain the nearest applicable SOC code which best describes your employment. Now, many of my clients are you have something to do with technology or connected with technology. So here's an example SOC code that you might come across. IT business analysts, architects and systems designers. So the letter would need to confirm that it's at the minimum rate, which in this case is 36,600. And just to go back to this, so it must confirm your current rate of pay. This should be in the format given in the codes of practice, for example, hourly rate or yearly salary. And confirmation that this is at or above the appropriate rate as stated in the codes of practice for Tier 2 sponsors. Now, a couple of points arising from this, which are important. The first one, of course, is that some people have been on furlough, and as part of those arrangements, their salary has been reduced to below the minimum rates. Now, there were a series of express concessions to deal with COVID, and which permitted employers in certain circumstances to treat skilled migrants in the same way. You will note from the language of the form that it only requires for a confirmation of the position as at today's date. So they're not referring back to the past, and therefore you may not even have to deal with that period when COVID had its most severe impact in the UK. So they're just dealing with what your salary is at the point of application. So that makes things much more straightforward. But if you were in a position where you're still on furlough or your pay has been reduced under one of the government approved schemes, then your employer would need to provide a good deal of detail setting what those arrangements are for it to be accepted. So if we go back to this, it then says if you're currently on maternity, paternity, shared parental or adoption leave, confirmation of the date this started, your salary immediately before the leave, and what your salary will be upon return. Now, what if your salary is still below the required rate, and therefore, the employer is not in a position to confirm that it's at or above the appropriate rate for the job as stated in the codes of practice for Tier 2 sponsors? Well, so far as your position is concerned as applicant, the form's only asking about what the position is, as at today's date. And so if it was below the minimum rate and your employer was prepared to bring it up to the required rate for the purposes of the application, then they could do that as far as you're concerned as an applicant. If it has fallen below the required rate, then the employer would be under a duty to make a report on one view to the Home Office. But that's not really an obligation that falls on you. So for the purposes of this application, subject to the employer discharging any obligations that they have, it's just looking at the position as at the date that you complete your ILR application. and the relevant declaration. So it would be it's possible in theory to correct positions where the salary isn't high enough. And I'm going to just show you the other documents which you should be thinking about or preparing before you make your application. So mandatory documents, your passport, degree certificate. That was just for the purposes of this example. This person was proving their English by way of a degree certificate. Then a declaration confirming you consent to their verification checks, all previous passports, evidence of your immigration status in the UK, and then your most recent payslip and bank or building society statement. These must be dated no earlier than 1 calendar month before the date of application. So what I'd suggest is when you're making when you're considering making an application for indefinite leave to remain in connection with the skilled worker visa and previously the Tier 2 general visa, then start preparing more than 1 month ahead. As you're probably aware, you can apply 28 days before you actually acquire the qualifying period of 5 years. And I'd recommend that you do that and get a decision on it before that period expires, so you don't get into the sort of issues concerning 3C leave under the Immigration Act 1971 that I've talked about in other videos. So I'd suggest preparing at least 3 months beforehand, possibly 6 months beforehand, and then you can iron out any issues ahead of the application if they do come up. This, of all categories, is one of the immigration categories that's undergone one of the greatest changes. The whole work visa system has been overhauled, and therefore, if you're transitioning between different versions of the work visas, you need to make sure everything is in order. If you'd like me to review your application or you'd like assistance, then you can contact me for a consultation on the link just below. Thanks, and bye for now.